first rule of the bureaucracy is to protect the bureaucracy. I'm the Christian whistleblower, Jeffrey Daugherty, welcoming you to another episode, wildcard bonus episode of Broadcast Excellence here on the Gospel Truth channel. I hope that you caught our show earlier today with R. Wayne Steiger, our regularly scheduled Wednesday midweek report. We also have Wayne on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern for not your normal Sunday morning show. So we appreciate Wayne chipping in. And I like it when there's not complete, perfect agreement. And we have a little bit of discussion. We have a little diversity of opinion. And it's okay if he thinks I'm wrong about some things, and if I think he's wrong about some things. There is unity amidst diversity, and that's the way I think it's supposed to be. DePretzer, nice to see you again. It's been a little bit. I know that your schedules probably don't work with mine perfectly, but I wanted to talk to you today. This is really Follow the Blood Part 3, but I messed up on the graphic and didn't want to recreate it. So we just went with bureaucracy. And the first rule of bureaucracy really is to protect the bureaucracy. Well, Jeff, what does this have to do with following the blood? What does this have to do with following the money? What does this have to do with religion? Well, if you watch the first two episodes, which are Follow the Blood 1, Follow the Blood 2, it gets you up to speed to where Paul had set up his religion. Paul had set up his fear and guilt-based paradigm. But once you get something set up and once it's beginning to function for you, it's essential that you create a bureaucracy, because a bureaucracy will administrate, a bureaucracy will orchestrate, and a bureaucracy will perpetrate. Thank you, Mac Gra Bra Menace. A bureaucracy will perpetuate what you've set up, and it will continue to perpetrate what you've set up. And Paul, the so-called apostle, the self-proclaimed apostle, greetings to you in Osaka. And the apostle set up a bureaucracy. Well, what is a bureaucracy? It is a kind of an org chart. It's a pyramid with the people at the top working their way down to the bottom. And of course, Paul set up what would become the bureaucracy of the Catholic Church, which would become the bureaucracy of all the Roman Protestant churches. Paul set up the bureaucracy of the Roman Catholic Church, which would become the bureaucracy of the Roman Protestant churches. And of course, at the top of that bureaucracy was the Pope, right? And still is the top of the bureaucracy. I want to read something to you from the first edition of Apostle Paul Antichrist. That was my first book. And here it is right here, Apostle Paul Antichrist, forward by George Norrie. Daugherty delivers innovation, talent, and bravery. And this first book had an epilogue. And I was going to write another book called Apostle Paul Antichrist, Rise of the Scarlet Woman, and I still might. But this gives you an idea of what Paul did after he set up his bureaucracy. And this is actually him setting up his bureaucracy. Let me just allow me to read it to you, if you will. It's just a page or two, and it's pretty interesting. Nero walked over and handed Paul a cup of wine. This is actually a novel, a fact-based historical novel. Probably wouldn't have done it as a novel had I to do it again, but here we go. Even Nero himself serves me, is obviously Paul thinking. The two men were reclining on couches, enjoying the last bits of a decadent feast. Naked girls and boys had served the food. Thankfully, Poppaea was nowhere to be seen. Palace life seems to agree with you, Paul, Nero said. Though you might want to watch your weight. Nero smiled, a smile of a shark. Perhaps a more active role in your trysts with all those girls might be in order. They shared a laugh like two vipers might. With the Jerusalem affair taken care of, I thought we might discuss your plans for galvanizing a religion for the empire. What was it you called it? Paul knew Nero remembered, but humored him anyway. Christianity, Paul said. Nero rolled the word around his mouth like the wine over his palate. Yes, I like that. Just enough Christ to be useful. Nero stood. Pleasure had passed and it was time for business. It's time for you to go back to work, my friend, doing what you do best. He handed Paul, who had taken the cue and was also now on his feet, a sheath of papers. I know you have difficulty with the printed word, so allow me to summarize. We will indeed institute this new religion that you proposed, and it will indeed become the official religion of the empire. As such, we have decided it should be given a fitting name. Nero pointed out the name on Paul's papers. I believe that is large enough for you to read, if you would, please. Paul was so astonished, Nero had to repeat himself. This is really good. Paul gathered his breath and read, "The Holy Roman Catholic Church." Nero smiled and nodded. Exactly. Holy for obvious reasons. Roman because it is our religion, and Catholic because it is to be worldwide, just like the empire. Paul found himself sitting and didn't remember doing it as Nero continued. The leader of the church shall be known as the Pope. It will be important to keep him close to the emperor. As such, you are a natural to be the first to hold the office. Paul managed to speak, but what about those that know me, those that remember me? Nero smiled his great white smile again. There aren't many of them left, are there? Nero chuckled, at least not ones that could prove problematic, and were moving to kill all those that escaped Titus at Jerusalem. Nevertheless, Nero pointed out a list of names large enough for Paul to read on another sheet. I've considered that and have a plan prepared. Paul saw that Nero had pointed to a list of the names of the 12 apostles of the Christ. We will spread the story of your heroic death as a martyr for the faith or some such nonsense. Paul recoiled reflexively at the words. No offense intended, my friend. I just mean we will craft a fitting finish to the heroic story of Paul the Apostle, myth though it may be, originator of the true faith. You will, of course, see to it that these men soon join you in martyrdom. He smiled before continuing. The tradition of the new Holy Roman Catholic Church will be that when a man becomes Pope, he shall change his name to an apostolic one. In your case, it will be especially helpful. Nero nodded to the list. So, which shall it be? Paul looked at the list, thinking this is absolutely brilliant. His lips curled into a smile as he remembered all the things they had written about him, all the things they had done to him, all the people that had resisted him, especially the one who had done it to his face. It was an easy choice, really. Paul looked at Nero, returned the shark smile, and said, Peter will do nicely. That was the epilogue from my first book, which was actually a historical novel, Apostle Paul Antichrist. What you're seeing, of course, or hearing is an extrapolation, my extrapolation of what happened at the beginning when the Roman Catholic Church was set up. Paul was the first pope. His name was changed to Peter for obvious reasons, and the tradition has continued down to this day. And it's a huge bureaucracy, as big as any organization. And the Roman Protestant churches have followed suit and also set up huge organizations, bureaucracies within their denominations or organizations. And what is this for? To perpetuate, to administrate, to continue, to make sure that the blood keeps flowing and to make sure that the money keeps flowing as well. Now, it's not sufficient that one, most of them are available in print. Some of them are available in print. If you go to the website, those that have print available, you can hit the drop-down menu and it'll show you paperback. First Thessalonians was written by Paul. That's the second book of the New Testament, not Mark. The first book of the New Testament, written in chronological order, the book of James. The second book in chronological order, First Thessalonians. So Paul, Nero, Caiaphas the high priest, and the king, Herod, set up their bureaucracy. But they went a step further, because the problem was you still had some true believers in the church as they set it up, and every now and again, true believers will come into the church. In spite of your best efforts to make them automatons, there will still be true believers in the church. And let me be clear, it's my considered opinion, though I'm doing everything I can to remove them and cause them to come out of their own accord, there are probably still today within both the Roman Catholic and within Roman Protestant churches those of a true heart, those that really believe, those that really think they are serving God in a true fashion. How long they can remain in such a scenario of error without being drawn into the error themselves? How long can an ice cube remain within a glass of lukewarm water before it itself becomes lukewarm water? I guess that is each ice cube to his or her own. But at any rate, there's also a bureaucracy set up within the churches themselves. Not so much within the Roman Catholic Church, because it's not necessary. There's a very hardcore, time-honored bureaucracy. The Roman Protestant daughters tend to be more independent in mind, supposedly, more independent in thought, allegedly. They're really just daughters of Mama Rome. But they have set up another level of bureaucracy, some more layers of bureaucracy within Roman Protestantism. And let me show those to you. And they are sold to you as a gift. They are sold to you as a good thing. They are sold to you as a positive thing, when they are, in fact, nothing other than another way to keep you and to keep men between you and the Christ, between you and the divine. The self-proclaimed Apostle Paul, or should we say Pope Peter the First, and he gave some apostles and some prophets and some evangelists and some pastors and some teachers for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ, till we all come in the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, unto a perfect man, unto the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ. Now, the implications are obvious that this will not happen until this false Christ, this plastic Jesus, this soylent Jesus who is people, soylent Jesus is people. Get the movie reference, ladies and gentlemen. This won't happen until he comes back. So from now until this false Christ comes back, and of course the key here is he's never coming back, so this will never change. So now between you and the divinity, there's apostles, 1 layer, prophets, 2 layers, evangelists, 3 layers, pastors, 4 layers, teachers, 5 layers. So there's 5 layers of bureaucracy between you and the divine. And what are these 5 layers of bureaucracy for? Perfecting the saints. These 5 layers of bureaucracy are for the work of the ministry. These 5 layers of bureaucracy are for edifying the body of Christ until plastic Jesus, soylent Jesus comes back. Now, of course, if this 5-fold bureaucracy between you and divinity is doing all the work of the ministry, if this 5-fold bureaucracy between you and the divinity is doing the edifying, what are the people within the church to do? Sit there, smile, nod, obey, and pay. Smile, nod, obey, and pay. Can't you see how this is a man-made bureaucracy that puts a five-fold bureaucracy between you and the divinity? You're not supposed to be waiting for someone else to perfect you. You're supposed to be involved in the activity of perfecting yourselves on a daily and a continual basis. You're not supposed to pay some group of guys in dresses to do the work of the ministry. You are to do the work of the ministry. You are not supposed to pay some guys in dresses to supposedly edify, build up, encourage the body. You are to edify, build up, and encourage. Paul says, Roman Catholicism says, Roman Protestantism says that there's a five-fold ministry to edify the body. The Christ said, edify yourself and edify your neighbors. This is the basis of the entire law, he said, of the Christ, the entire way of the Christ. Look at that word edifying in the original Greek, verse number 12, and see if I'm not stretching that. See that I am not stretching that. Edification. What does it say? The building up. The building up, the act of building, the act of edification, the act of advancement, the act of creating a suitable dwelling, the act of building one another up. And the Christ said, love your neighbor even as you love yourself. Now, I ask you, if you think you have original sin and you're a dirty, rotten sinner, how can you possibly love yourself? You can't. But when you have the realization that you don't have original sin, but you've got the spark of divinity within, then you can love yourself. You can recognize and love the divinity within you. And that being said, you can now love your neighbor instead of regarding your neighbor with suspicion and trying to keep them at arm's length, because of course they're sinners. They're dirty, rotten sinners. At best, they're sinners saved by grace, and they're still sinners. And it automatically, even if it's only subconscious, causes you to keep your brothers, your sisters at arm's length because they're sinners. You'd be stupid not to. But when you realize that you don't have original sin, you've got the spark of divinity within. And when you realize that I don't have original sin, I have the spark of divinity within, it allows you to look upon your neighbor and see divinity and not the devil. To see divinity and not sin. And that allows you to, instead of drawing a line to keep them out, it allows you to draw a circle to bring them in. Draw a circle around both of you, all of you. That's edifying the body of Christ. To edify the people of the Christ is to love yourselves and to love your neighbors as yourselves. Roman Catholicism, Roman Protestantism has set up this five-fold bureaucracy, this five-fold ludicrosity, this five-fold clergy nonsense to put 5 layers between you and the divinity. You've been buying it for 2,000 years collectively, and for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years individually. How much longer will you allow? How much longer will you support? How much longer will you defend? How much longer will you remain a member of a system that intentionally places 5 levels of bureaucracy between you and the Christ, all designed with nothing else in mind but to keep you in line, to do everything for you while you sit there, smile, nod, and pay? Ladies and gentlemen, is that good enough for you? May I suggest that if it is good enough for you, just stay within Pauline Christianity. If that's good enough for you, stay in your Roman Catholic Church. If that's good enough for you, stay in your Roman Protestant church. Because that attitude of saying, okay, I'll sit here and I'll let myself be taught, entertained, served, that attitude of sitting in a nest and waiting for mama bird to fly back and right into your beak, more please, that will not serve you well in actually guiding your own spirit, mastering your own ascension, being your own guru. So best you stay in the nest and wait for mama bird to come back and regurgitate down your beak, you little bird. Now, if that's not good enough for you, may I suggest you fly the nest, fly the coop, and never return. Like a bird, sit there in the nest under the bureaucracy and eat up. Or for those of you that are eagles, soar above the 5 layers of bureaucracy and remove all impediments between you and the Christ. That's my advice. Let's see if we have any questions. In the Mormon Church, deacons, elders, priests, high priests, general authorities, apostles. Jehovah's Witnesses, you got ministerial servants, you got congregational servants, you got leaders, but to be fair, the witnesses have it pared down to a body ministry about as well as anyone, so we can't really jump on them for that. But the Catholic Church, you got popes and cardinals and bishops and monsignors and fathers and several other ones I forgot. If that's okay with you, and if that fits your personality, then this isn't your time. Hope you get another shot, but you can't come to true spirituality with that attitude. You'll never make it. Isn't it a little past your bedtime? No, my bedtime is 4 a.m., but thanks for asking. Sit, stand, sit, stand, sit, stand. That's church to me, and it's just a way to lose some fat. Well, may I suggest there's better, safer ways to get your cardio? If you don't stand, everyone looks at you like you killed the Pope. Oh, that's funny. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. One more section in this little series about have an exit plan. Have an exit plan. And we'll bring that up to you later today. I fell asleep in church. I was bored. I don't blame you. Well, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, your friendly neighborhood Christian whistleblower. I salute you for seeking after truth. Follow the money, follow the blood, and decide if you are okay with this 5-fold bureaucracy between you and the divine. Michelle, I've been asked several times to talk more about the Jehovah's Witnesses. I may have to do a series on the Jehovah's Witnesses because it seems there's many of you out there that at least have some study with them or have been studying with them or have some interest in them or have some preference for them. And let me tell you that it is a very well-run, a very insidious, and a very attractive organization because they do have some truth, and the truths they have are profound, and they bring you in and get you to buy the whole 9 yards, which puts you in an even larger top-down bureaucracy, which keeps you from the true message of the Christ ultimately, and which keeps you from being your own guru, guiding your own spirit, mastering your own ascension, and being who the Christ wants you to be. So I'll take that under serious advisement. Awesome people, as Amanda said, I agree, just not for me. There's no difference between Plastic Jesus and Soylent Jesus. Plastic Jesus was an old name I used. Soylent Jesus is a new name I use. So it's the same person. There is some speculation that The LDS and the J-Dubs were both funded by Rothschilds, but we don't need to go there to find reasons not to go there. Guide your own spirit, master your own ascension, be your own guru. Decide, has the world gone crazy or have you? And when you decide, unindoctrinate yourself. Guide your own spirit, master your own ascension, be your own guru. Rearview Jesus is the best Jesus. I agree, Michael. So folks, I'll see you next time. And until then, stay fearless, my friends.